Assalamu alaikum. Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Doubt is a difficult thing to deal with in this world. People who doubt are suspicious of everything. They doubt everything. They doubt the food they eat. They doubt the world around them. They doubt their own birth. They doubt their thoughts. They doubt their friends. They doubt their wife. They doubt their children. They doubt everything. And when you live a life of suspicion, life becomes very difficult for you. It means that you believe that you are the only one who understands anything. You are the most clever, the only clever person in the world, and everybody else is trying to somehow fool you or somehow take advantage of you or somehow push you towards inappropriate decisions. We need to give up a life of suspicion, and we have to enter into a life of acceptance and forgiveness and seeing things with an open heart, compassion, and mercy. This comes about when we let go of mind and desire, when we let go of arrogance, when we let go of Maya, when we let go of all of the qualities that are inappropriate for the true path, that are inappropriate to move forwards towards Allah. We get rid of obsessions. We get rid of hatred. We get rid of miserliness. We get rid of murder. We get rid of theft. We get rid of I, mine, yours, and the differences between them. All of these separations between ourselves and anything and everything else lead to conflict within us and cause disturbances in our being and create doubt in our being. They create animosity in our being. They create separations and hatred in our being. The world is a marketplace, and what's sold in this marketplace of the world are all of these inappropriate things. What's sold in the marketplace of the world is hatred, miserliness, mine and yours, separations between this one and that one, higher and lower, caste, differences between religion, and giving importance to all of these differences. There's no question that differences exist among men. And there's no question that there are different ways to worship God. But what happens is, as opposed to accepting the fact that other people have differences, all of a sudden blame is placed on anyone who has differences, as if somehow they have lost their way and you are the only one who knows the way. The prophet once said that the differences among his ulama, his people, is just a sign of God's bounty and God's grace and God's overwhelming effulgence, that so many different opinions can exist and still people can be appropriate. So we, each of us, individually, have to become open to the rest of humanity. We have to become open to people who see things in a different way than we see them. This doesn't mean that we have to give up our way or lose confidence in our way. It just means we should leave other people alone. We should allow everyone to follow the path that they're on, and Allah will be the one who decides whether they are going in the right direction or not. You see, judgment has been kept by Allah as His alone. He has kept creation, judgment, and sustenance of humanity. But man too often moves right into the realm of judgment. And very often, when man moves into the realm of judgment, he doesn't call it judgment. He calls it following Allah's laws. And so man gives himself the authority when he believes that he is following Allah's laws to do what man thinks he wants to. And because of that, you often see religions turning to fanaticism, where they commit unspeakable atrocities in the name of God, unspeakable atrocities in the name of our Lord, the Creator and the Sustainer, the compassionate and the merciful. The one who is compassionate and merciful has atrocities committed in His name. The incongruity of that isn't even seen by the ones who do it, because in their minds, in their belief system, they are protecting God as if God needs protection. We are the ones who need protection. We need protection from Him. And what we fail to realize is, as we separate ourselves from others, as we condemn others, as we judge others, we individually create a separation between ourselves and our Lord, because we've lost the sense of unity and we live in separations. We need to understand what unity is. And unity is not having other people agree with our point of view. Unity is understanding that all of mankind is from one family, one mother and father, and we're all created by one God. And no matter what God is called, and He is called many different names, Andavan in Tamil, Allah in Arabic, Yahweh in Hebrew, and so on. No matter what He is called, He is the same God. If we believe that there is but one God, and we do believe that, then whatever name He is given is His name, and He can have more than one name. Who are we to say He is limited to being called one name? In French, it's called Dieu, means God. But the point is that when we begin to make these petty differentiations, what we're trying to do is create separation. And much of the world is in the business of creating separation. And the world is in the business of creating separation. We need to step away from that somehow. We need to be satisfied with what we know, satisfied with what we have, and be able to take in what we have and be content with it. We don't need to judge everybody else. We don't need to tell everybody else what to do. The Quran says, advise, but don't force. There is no compulsion in religion, which means that we can advise and then turn away. There's no need to use a sword to make our point. Our point should always be one of compassion. There was a Zen monk who had a very large following, and they would come to see him every morning and evening. And one among them was a thief, and it was noticed. People saw it. So attention was brought to the master of the fact that someone within the group was stealing, and the master paid no attention to it. The same person a week or so later stole again, and the other pupils put together a petition to the master telling him that this man has stolen again, and if he didn't do something about it, they would have to leave en masse. So the master called them all together and said, I have your petition, and you are all wise people. You all know the difference between right and wrong, and you will be able to find somebody to help you if you leave here. But the one who is stealing doesn't even know the difference between right and wrong. Who's going to help him? So if you all want to go, you can all go and find other teachers. But I don't know if there's anybody else that will take him on. So I will stay and take him on. And everybody cried, including the thief. And this little speech ended his need to steal. But what ended his need to steal was the compassion and the mercy that was shown. The pupils wanted to separate him out. The teacher refused to separate anybody out and wanted everyone to be included and wanted to find a way that everyone could be included. So in inclusivity, solutions come to these problems. In inclusivity, mercy and compassion is actually brought into action. And when mercy and compassion are brought into action, then truth is seen and mercy becomes the way of the world. Unfortunately, mercy and compassion are not often brought into action. There was a exam at Oxford University, and the topic for discussion was, how did Jesus change wine into water, or rather water into wine? And they had a 2-hour time period to write their answers. And one of the students didn't write anything. And the story goes that it was Lord Byron. He just sat there. And the proctor came over to him and said, you have to write something. So he wrote down on the paper, water met its master and it blushed. The point being that there is a master. And when the master comes in contact with us, we become very small. We should understand his effulgence, his greatness, his overwhelming superiority. His touch is of such monumental importance that it changes things. His touch is so great that it alters the way things are. And the way it alters is through love and through mercy and through compassion. Love, mercy, compassion alter people, alter even elemental forms. And if we can understand that, then we should understand that our surrender should be to Allah, not to a religion. Our surrender should be to that effulgent power that controls the entire universe and all of the universes and holds everything in its power, holds everything in its grace, holds everything in its ability to create, recreate, sustain, and nourish. And when we truly understand that, when we are overwhelmed by mercy and compassion, things happen. Arrogance fades. Hatred fades. Animosity fades. Murder, theft, all fade. These things can't exist simultaneously with mercy and compassion. And the opposite is also true. When we become fanatic, when we become overwhelmed with the need to control others, then mercy and compassion fade within us. And this need to overwhelm and control separates us from our Lord, because he is the only one who can truly control. He is the only one who is in charge of everything, and everything moves as he wishes. So when man tries to do the same thing, what happens is conflict. What happens is animosities that didn't exist all of a sudden rear their head and grow. And now we have wars, and we have various kinds of disruptions and conflicts, not only between separate religions, but even within the same religions. Once the points of view become so vastly separate, and when people hold on to their point of view without allowing the other point of view to be allowed to exist, there seems to man at that time to be only one solution, and that solution is war. And because of that, there have been constant wars within religions. Within Islam, the Shia and the Sunni have been at odds for decades. Within Christianity, the Catholics and the Protestants have been at odds for decades. Even in Judaism, the Hasidim and the non-Hasidim began to have terrible, terrible conflicts between each other, and everybody begins to accuse each other of some kind of an apostasy, some kind of heresy, some kind of not a true belief. When we can begin to understand that, then we begin to learn to turn away from these kinds of arguments, to turn away from this kind of understanding, and we learn to become accepting. It's only through acceptance that we can find truth. It's only through acceptance that we can be forgiving. It's only through acceptance that we can begin to become content. When we don't accept, it is constantly a situation where we have to change things. Contentment isn't there, so we need another outlet. We need to create certain situations before we can become content. There was a tiger who was living in the jungle, and it was difficult for him to maintain his supply of food. And there was enough, but he wanted more. He wanted things to become easier for him. So he decided to go to one of the nearby villages where there were cattle and sheep and goats, and he thought he would feast on these farm animals because they would put up no resistance. And so he decided to go to the village. Well, when the people in the village saw the tiger, they immediately locked up all the farm animals. They put them inside barns, inside corrals, and they also began to get bows and arrows and spears and guns and hunt the tiger. And now the tiger not only wasn't getting easy food, he was in distress and in turmoil because people were trying to kill him. This went on for about a month, and he decided he wasn't getting anywhere. So he went and sat and thought what to do. And he came to a big tree, a big fruit tree, and he asked the tree for advice. And the tree said to him, "You know, I came from a tiny seed, and I was satisfied with that tiny seed. And look how I've grown. My branches now reach toward the sky. The fruits that I give off are eaten by animals and birds and man. And I not only have enough for myself, I have enough for everybody else. God supplies. You need to understand what your portion was, what your portion is. You had enough in the jungle, but you weren't satisfied. You had enough to satisfy your thirst and your hunger, but you weren't satisfied. And because you weren't satisfied, you shifted your environment, and now you find that this is more difficult than what you had before. Go back to the jungle and take what your portion is. A dog, realizing that every time it went to drink, it only got a little bit of water at a time that its master gave it, and it had to lick to get its water. So he went to a cow, and he said to the cow, "How can I get an entire mouthful of water at one time?" And the cow told him that there was a lake nearby, and there was an unending supply of water. And he went to the lake, and he tried to take in large gulps of water, but he realized that he couldn't. He could only use his tongue to lick at the water and take in a little bit of water at a time. He would, in order to quench his thirst, he had to lick. There was no way that a dog was capable of taking large gulps of water. It's like that for man. Man is licking the world. Man is taking in little bits of the world here and there and everywhere. Man licks at his lust. He licks at his desires. He licks at the world, when at the same time that he's licking at the world to try and find satisfaction, there is an entire world of grace inside of him that has been put there by Allah. And if he only turns from the world towards that which is the great giver, he would understand that everything he needs, he already has, and it's all been placed within him and inside of him. And if he can only understand that, then he could stop licking at the world, and he could become satisfied and full and he could reach contentment. You see, no matter how much of the world we try to bring into ourselves, or how much of the world we try to get for ourselves, there is no satisfaction within it. We never become fully content. Everybody always wants more. That need, that desire for more never ends. And as long as it's the world that we're looking for satisfaction from, we will never be satisfied, because the world isn't capable of giving contentment to man. The only thing that can give us true contentment is that taste from Allah, that atom from God that is within what he gives us that brings contentment. So God's grace can give us contentment. The entire world cannot give us contentment. And when we begin to realize the truth of that, then we will begin to realize that we're looking in the wrong places to find contentment. Men go to the racetrack or to a casino to bet, to win more of the world, thinking that if they win, they will satisfy that which they need. And they double up on what they're getting. And as Bawa says, they get twice what they came with. They get the world and they get hell, because there's nothing there that can satisfy you. So what you have to do is, as opposed to gambling on the world, place your intention with Allah, and place your intention with coming close to Allah. Place your intention into knowing what Allah's gracious qualities are. Place your intention into understanding Allah's glorious names. Place your intention in understanding Allah's effulgent qualities. Place your intention in that direction. And if you do that, then satisfaction will come to you. That is the place where you can finally find contentment, because true contentment is not available anywhere else. And until man realizes that true contentment is not available anywhere else, he will be very similar to the dog that chases a car. And when he finally gets to it, or the car stops, he doesn't know what to do with it. And he goes and looks for another car to chase. So we can either chase ephemeral understandings that have nothing within them, that can't satisfy us, or we can finally make the decision to turn to the truth, and in the truth find our reward and find what can truly satisfy us. In order to be able to do this, we have to also simultaneously develop some of God's qualities. A man who doesn't have compassion will lose God's wealth, because God's wealth is compassion. And if we turn away from compassion, we've lost our connection to truth. We've lost our connection to reality. Understand, each of us, that as we become selfish, as we become miserly, as we try to separate ourselves from others by way of wealth, or by way of power, or by way of domination, What we are in fact doing is separating ourselves from our Lord. And in that separation, we are dooming ourselves by our own desire. We are dooming ourselves to rebirth by our own inclination. We are dooming ourselves because of our inappropriate understandings and inappropriate attitudes. This is simply called ignorance. Ignorance will take us in directions that are entirely wrong, that have no basis in truth, that have no basis in fact, yet we follow these things as if they were reality. We believe that if we have more money, we will become happy. If we have more real estate, we will become content. If we have more fame or more power, we will become content. And none of these things will bring us contentment because they don't have God's contentment within them. The only thing that can bring that kind of contentment to us is that tiny atom that God puts into this world for each of us to find our contentment. And it doesn't take an enormous amount of mountains of objects to find that contentment. God's contentment is smaller than an atom, but it's from God, and it's from truth, and it's from reality. So we need to refocus our life towards reality. We must understand what, in fact, reality is. We must understand what, in fact, truth is. And we have to understand the exalted nature of mercy and compassion. These are God's names. When we do something, we say, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of God, the merciful and the compassionate. And if we are without mercy and compassion, if we are merely trying to adapt ourselves to what's in the world and what we can take and get from the world, we will find that we are lost. And as time goes on, we will find it very difficult to return to what is truth. When I was a young lawyer, I had a question, and I went to see one of the older lawyers in the office. He was in his mid-70s and he was still practicing law. And I asked him the question, and he took me into the library and he pulled out a book and he flipped the pages and showed me a case that was exactly what my question was. Now imagine, I mean, this is a library with 3,000 books, and he could pick out a book and find the case that was relevant through his memory. And I told him, I said, this is really something, you'd be able to do this. And he said, yeah, it's true, but understand, this is all that I know. I don't know anything else. When I'm with my wife, I'm still in this library. When I'm with my children, I'm still in this library. When I go to worship, I'm still in this library. This library has become my life, and I can't escape from it. As you grow older, don't become like me. Find out where the truth is. Don't believe that the truth is in the world. And I was about 25 when I heard that. And he was telling the truth. He had finally realized that he had focused his entire life on things that were at the very most peripheral to his existence, at the very most outside of what he really wanted, and in truth didn't bring him any peace and any contentment. It was just a lot of knowledge that he had available that was of no use to him after he walked out of the office. So each of us has to find truth in our life, and we have to find reality in our life. And we can't accept worldly praise, worldly titles, worldly accomplishments as what's going to bring that truth to us. What's going to bring that truth to us, what's going to bring that contentment to us, is turning away from the world and turning towards God, turning towards God's qualities and understanding his nature. This is the way that we can find our escape from this world into eternity. And if we can't do that, then the consequences of not doing that are rebirth after rebirth after rebirth. So to escape, we have to go to the source. We have to go to the source that created us. We have to go to that which we can't see, because that source lives in a light world. It doesn't exist within this world. That source is without form. So as long as our attachments are to form, as long as our attachments are to the senses and the sensual pleasures that we have missed the point. So we have to re-examine ourselves. We have to recalculate what it is we're trying to accomplish. And what it is we're trying to accomplish is to understand the nature of truth, the nature of our Creator, and the nature of who we truly are. We are not this manifest being. We are the light body within this manifest body. And that light body is what can move to eternity. And if we don't spend time working on that light body, we've wasted our life. So let's not do that. Let's bring us to the truth. Let's find out what the reason we are here for is, and let's accomplish the intention that Allah created us for, and that was to know him. And may we all understand that to find that intention, we have to surrender to him, because without his aid and without his help, this can't be accomplished. Without the intervention of our Lord and the helpers that he has sent into this world, we cannot accomplish that objective. So let us beg our Lord to help us go on the straight path to find him, and beg our Lord to make us successful in this endeavor for each of us. Ameen. Ameen. Ya Rabbil Alameen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.